What a fun event this has been so far. Given that we are the ones between you and your first bite, I'm going to try and embody Shelley's behavior as much as possible and make this panel look like a Gilmore Girls episode. They're going to talk as fast as we can. So that's what we're going to try and do. The topic of the conversation for today, it's interesting that it happens in the middle of the day, from my perspective at least. Customer experience is where a lot of the behaviors of our customers, of our colleagues, of our partners in our stores manifest. They manifest in the technology that we build, they manifest in the campaigns that we launch, and it's where the rubber meets the road, and when we get a lot of the data from as well. Some of the topic of the conversation that we're going to touch today upon are, simple questions. What's the future of customer experience? Who's going to own the customer? Guys, no fight, please. Indulge me on that list. But before we kick it off, I wanted to I don't know, Jesse, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit. I love it. It's always a bit of a awkward question for a second, and of course, if you could also introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Jessica. I run brand marketing and partnerships at Shopify, which there includes everything, including social experiential events, creative UX. We run a retail store, which some people might not know, along with partnerships. I've been there about 9 months. Before that, I was at Coinbase for a while and Visa for a long time before that. I actually live here in San Diego, in Carlsbad, and I'm thrilled to be here. Longtime Brand Innovators fan. I think I've been in the community for like 15 years.
That's awesome. My name is Scott Frost. Also live in San Diego. There's a couple of us here. I'm the director of media and retention at Chubbies. So everything brand, performance, SMS, email, push notification, that trickles into UI, UX a bit because we really care about landing experiences, where people are going, what are they seeing. Also translates over to loyalty. As well, so we'll get into that a little bit. But before here, I was at Google for a little bit, advising some specialty retail clients, and then I was at Adidas for about 5 years, looking after their brand marketing, digital marketing for the running business unit for North America. And then prior to that, I spent a lot of time in the agency landscape, which is an awesome place to start your career. Let me go from there, but yeah, it's a little about.
Wonderful, excellent. So the first question that when we got prepared, we were trying to brainstorm to make the most of your time. And of course, my mom is calling me right now. How wonderful is that?
Speakerphone.
Well, it's also to remind us that we are human beings. And whenever we are marketing to human beings, we also always have to forget that there is that stratification of emotions, that CX sometimes can be, so many times, I'm a big victim of Chubbies from that perspective, because I'm probably one of your biggest clients. I love those shorts, and I spend 50% of my time in Miami, so you can imagine how I buy a lot of those. So this is a question that I'm going to aim at you, Scott, first to begin with. What should drive our philosophy behind CX?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you'll see CX kind of sit in a different team. It's like support team, customer support. Let us know how it's going. I think that's kind of where it has been, but at least the philosophy for us is that we are all part of the customer experience team in one way or another. Every single touch point from your brand is impacting the customer's experience. And so on its umbrella, that's the foundation, and we all play our part in every touch point and what that means for them. I would just say for us, from a little bit of time ago, probably when you got introduced to the brand, it was very centered around how do we just inspire fun, smiles. You should feel that when you touch the brand at any point, any content, interactions. If you still get our emails, still that way. And it kind of evolved into, before going public, and it kind of transitioned into, we're taking their brand very seriously. We need to drive profitability. We need to drive top line. It became a very business kind of first approach versus customer approach, which was good in some ways, until you start to run into, oh, wow, it's becoming very expensive to acquire customers. Oh, wow, prices are going up. Our branded search terms are up 100% year over year. What's happening here? Looking at it from a broad strokes perspective, we did a little bit of deep dive to say, okay, how many people are repeat purchasers that purchased us throughout the whole year last year? was about a quarter of people. That's actually kind of come down over time. We've been so focused on trying to get new people to the brand, but it's very expensive to do that. And it's much more profitable to drive a second purchase. And so what that really means for us is like, how do we revamp our loyalty? How do we get that second one? It's about 75% cheaper to drive a second purchase once they're introduced to the brand. And so we've sort of pivoted a focus to stand up a whole different department. And we have a VP of customer that's very focused around mapping out beginning to end. So when you first see us versus when you get your package at home, what is happening? Where are the breaking points? Where do we need to plug those gaps? And I'll just, be a little transparent, but we haven't done the best job of like, after you push, all right, order purchased, you might not hear from us for 5 days before your shorts get there. But like, we need to get you excited. How do you wear these? What should you do with these things? Go out and try them. We have a funny idea that we haven't punted around quite yet, but your shorts also have dreams. They should relive their dreams. Go make that happen for them. So we're kind of like, that's the kind of coming back to where our roots were, but a lot of that is like very brand inspiring, but driving advocacy and loyalty. And I know there's been some comments on that, but for us, that's really where we are now, and having a very centralized approach, but we all are part of the CX channel. We're on Slack. We see everything. And even for Black Friday, we had to do a bunch of returns. All of us jumped in and tried to help process returns. And so it very feels like it's all one team oriented around this, but that's where we've gone with it.
What about you, Jess? I know that you have some opinions with regards to the one team approach, whereby one of the points that you made during the conversation was CX. Everybody works in CX. It's not like other marketing teams are not part of CX because of these concerted approach.
Yeah. Similar to what Scott started with, I think a lot of times in the past, and I've worked in organizations where CX was the customer service team, and that is how it was looked at, and they sat in a silo, and you can see those organizations. It's the customer service team that's jumping in to the comments on social media where they don't belong, and someone is excited about it and they're sort of like inserting themselves into how can I help you, or other places. And so I've seen it when it's gone really wrong. Shopify does it really right. Similar to Chubbies, it's a cross organization first priority, meaning that above all else. And we all work on customer experience. We have the same Slack channel that everybody's in. Everybody looks at merchant complaints, merchants being one side of our business, and then consumers being the other side. All sort of rallying around how can we solve for merchant problems, like first and foremost on the customer service side. We don't want merchants to be unhappy. But then also all of our marketing efforts to merchants sort of have to lend themselves to how can we support the things that they're having the most trouble with? How can we solve for, the problems within the product that, they're facing? How can we solve on the marketing side? We have a lot of like merchant promotions. We give merchants milestones when they hit certain sales goals. And we certainly don't want to be sending a merchant a super fun, award if they're pissed at us for, not releasing their dollars, or, we're holding them for chargebacks. So we really have to be fully integrated across the organization. And I love that Shopify has found a way to do this. And it really is about, one, of course, a lot of tools that allow us to do it, but two, just a lot of checks and balances, i.e., you have to go and check the merchant, store in the back to make sure that there's not any issues that are happening before you sort of release some of these marketing programs. You have to be totally in line with the CX team so that when we release a big social campaign, they're not jumping into comments that they don't belong into, but they are still solving for the customer service issues. So I do think it's a really cross-functional piece that, AI and technology has helped out a bunch, but it also still requires a ton of effort from real humans.
It's an interesting point when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence to govern the customer experience perspective. You try and prioritize exactly what is it that we should invest on? What is it that we should work on? And I have seen people working on, to me, fairly simple and manageable prioritization and grouping and segmentation projects using AI, basically tracking the entire funnel of the customer experience, understanding what behaviors were driving what kind of revenue impact, and do a regression based on those things. How much of that narrative And I'm only referring to narrative right now. I'm not talking about the implementation. How much of that narrative actually exists on your team, for example, Scott?
Yeah. We think a lot of this in a lifetime value sense, and so we have it broken down actually. Like, what is the customer lifetime value based off the entry point for the first purchase in which category, and what does that actually mean? And so you find some interesting things, and maybe some are more intuitive than others. But if you come and buy a pair of swim trunks from us, guys don't really need a lot of swim trunks. I have like 2 and I'm good. I have more than that, naturally, Chubbies. But if you buy a polo from us, you're more likely to buy 4 or 5. And so that weights a little bit of decision making in terms of like how we lead messaging, where do we go into. So I would say that from that perspective, LTV is really a driving force. But even clicking into that, how many people have pleasant experiences with CX after they purchase, and what does that cohort actually mean from a longer term value perspective? More often than not, they stick around longer, they tend to buy more. And so we sort of use that as a little bit more of a guiding light, as it were. And then also going back to what I was saying before from a repeat purchase perspective. But that's really the framework of how we tend to think of things. And so anything that we can kind of drive that. And of course, we have our testing and learning, and how do we parse people out and A/B test against those, and who has higher LTVs at the end of the day. But we look at it from anything from a 30 to 90-day incrementality kind of LTV point of view, all the way from a year to 4 years. There's different breakdowns of how you can kind of look at these things, and how that changes over time is really interesting as well. But
how much does CX also influence product suggestions and the development also of new products, I would imagine?
Oh, huge, massive. We take all customer feedback very seriously, just plugging the AI bit, just summarizing all the complaints, grouping them by topics. How many are we hearing about each different things? And we hold ourselves to a pretty high standard in terms of defects that customers are reporting. And that all goes back to the product team. And so we try to keep it above industry standard. So I think it's almost not acceptable to have 2 for every 1,000 things sent out. That's too much for us. I think it's like those industry standards like 2 out of 100 or something like that. But also before we create anything, we have our customer insights team do focus groups across the board on each different type of customer. We have a whole profile of who that actually is, what they care about, what their lives are, where their touch points is, and where we can kind of fit in. And so that really guides our whole product roadmap at the end of the day. So there's kind of like the future view and then the retroactive view, and kind of putting those things 2 together. But again, the customer experience is at the core of all of that.
I think that is a bit redundant to ask you the same question, because I'm sure that Spotify actually lives and breathes on
Shopify.
Shopify.
It's okay, everybody does.
It's okay. What did I say?
Spotify.
Spotify.
Everyone does it.
I love it. I love
It's
it.
green. It's so close.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
really
Listen,
true.
it's just it is what it is. But you do you do a lot of your product development. I think it's deriving exactly from that type of observation,
Of course. I mean, we're a SaaS.
including Spotify. Goes without saying.
Without
Yes,
question.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're a SaaS product, even though we don't like to think of ourselves as that. So everything is derived from, combing through the hundreds of, forums and places where they can share feedback directly. We have places actually in the UI where merchants can share what are the things that, you feel that's missing from the admin panel. What can we build into, better help you with marketing, with all the things that come with that, with CRM. Everything that we do is sort of to make an entrepreneur and a founder and a small business owner's life easier. And so we build customer experience channels into the Shopify experience so that they can standardize them. And even if you are a 1-person business just getting started, like you'll get the same exposure to these pieces of the full funnel and the pieces to make it easier to engage your customers as, a person generating $100 million a year.
So it's almost like you can make one person look like Amazon, which is fantastic. I love that.
Except they get to keep their own data and they get to keep their own customer. And
Is that so?
good point.
Oh, wow. So I wanted to double click actually on something that is more related to technology and AI. This is maybe to you, Scott. I'm curious to hear more about. There are some pieces of technology that I have been using that, for example, where customers can actually take a picture of the defect and just upload it into the return so that you can just have the return immediately charged back to your credit card without having to actually receive shorts. And and that's pretty cool money wise. That's this stuff. It's sick. I love it. How do you implement new ideas, new technology in your throughout your entire food chain and customer experience?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, it's firstly identifying those bottlenecks and those places where things tend to kind of get stuck in the process, and see if there's any tools out there that we can kind of plug into to help alleviate that quickly. And then there's always that discussion of do we build it ourselves, or do we get a third party to help with that? We are on Shopify Plus. There you go.
You sure it's not Spotify Plus?
Yeah, pretty sure. Last I checked. But within that, there's so many, that ecosystem is so big, and so there's so many places you can go that can help you do that. But there are like layers of like tech that kind of go on top of these things. And so one example is it's funny enough, we wanted to like make sure that we were really doing the most with wish lists on our site. Like that was kind of just sitting there for a long time, but it was really easy to find someone to do that. But also, if you were using this tool, then it's like, okay, these people are wishlisting these things. They're this type of customer. Let's put them in our consumer flow within our email automation, and then give them like things that are similar to that, cross-sell, upsell, all those things. So that's just one tiny, small example of that. But I think future view, it's going to be just ever evolving. We're always kind of scouring where we can turn things over to put AI into, but a lot of it I think is going to be an analysis based as well, because we're a very data driven company. And so I love the first example from Shelly that was like, hey, I've just put in what I want out of this database and boom, here it is. So anything that's sitting on like a Tableau or like a Looker that's doing similar things like that, we're all over those types of things. And so that's a couple examples for us.
That's one area in which we're similar, because at Mint, every single department is supposed to have 1 to 2 projects that involve generative AI. And on the marketing team, we decided to help the entire team get knowledge bases, and also investing in their reskilling of some parts of the workforce that perhaps are not, that we can see in the future could potentially be not as comfortable from a job career perspective. And that's something that we decided to invest on the marketing team to create a culture of bringing people back into being enthusiastic about their career as well. Now, you've mentioned a lot of steps, a lot of technology, steps and layers. So it's almost like a metric of activities where you can build your priorities. But on my question to you then is going to be, so who owns the customer? Who's going to make that final decision that say, yo, this is how we're doing it?
I think that's an interesting question. On our side, I mean, obviously the whole premise of Shopify is that the businesses get to keep their customer. We don't own any of that customer data unless, we are exposed to them in another way. Merchants are our customers and the customers are with the merchants. What we are seeing as an interesting new trend, which I think will grow even more, is a lot of the large creators, celebrities that have lent their IP to large businesses in the past. And then it is the business that is selling from their own website, i.e. Coach Prime has lent his IP to Nike, or Drake has lent his IP to Nike, and Nike is selling on their site the Noctas or, the Coach Prime line. What we're seeing now is Coach Prime wants to own his own customers. And so he wants Nike to send whatever supply that they will have to his warehouse, and they will ship it from there, or Nike will API into a Shopify front end so that they are buying from the Coach Prime website, shipping from Nike, but Coach Prime gets to keep his own customers. He can see who's buying across his different lines, i.e. who has bought a Blender's pair of sunglasses, who has bought a pair of his Nikes, who has bought one of his energy drinks, and then can reward and build his own loyalty program for his fans, which I think is awesome. And we love that. And we want more people to do it. But we're seeing it as a huge shift in the way that celebrities and creators want to engage with their end customer. They want to own it themselves versus all these big brands get to keep all of that data, and then they can't remarket to them later when they come out with new products.
I wonder why that is. It's so rude of them not to share their data. So that's terrible. So when we were preparing for this conversation, we started also. I think it was you, Jess, that asked, so what's out there? What's going to happen in the future? And we kind of wrote down a series of ideas and things that we thought were going to be that we can see on the horizon happening. So the way we are managing innovation certainly has to change. The way we're managing budgets that fuel that innovation certainly has to change. The way the governance treats new projects, potential failure, all these kind of things also needs to evolve to a whole new level. Another element was, how do we see the organization developing? Are we going to be inward looking, or are we going to be outward looking, where we're going to involve partners as well? And when do we involve them in? So what's the future holding?
Who has the crystal ball?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Well, we can ask Manscaped. I'm sure they have a lot of experience around that. So
we share some similarities there. I've been thinking a little bit about this. I think what's interesting is that, at least for most of the AI tools and what's out there, and what things that are built into certain platforms, it only works as good as the data that you put in and the amount of data that goes into these things as well. And people are starting to create their own GPT versions of very specific use cases. I think it's too broad to say we're going to have a general GPT for everything. I can't be a doctor and a firefighter at the same time. That doesn't really work as an example, but start to kind of carve in these niche things. But within that, even more a deeper level, personally, it seems like Google's an interesting spot for this. Like, you have your Gmail, your calendar, your notes, your Keep, your Nest, and everything else under one profile. But what if you could build your own GPT based off that for yourself? Or if anyone's played around with like what they're doing for the sandbox and topics and trying to get around privacy, they're trying to keep it on your own device, so it's very privacy safe. But what if you had your own GPT of you on your device, but anonymized to interact with others? Almost like your own agent of your own kind of AI agent thing. And what if you could go to a site and that says, hey, agent 123 has these interests. What do you have? Oh, let me get it from the shelf. It almost becomes like the retailer interaction digitally, to then you could merch your whole site based off of what this could look like. And it's almost like agent to agent. All right, cool. Let me tailor this experience for you. I don't really know who you are because you're agent 123, but I do know all these characteristics, and we have these tagged on our side too. Let us give that to you. That's kind of where I think things are going personally. Just thinking through a little bit, but within that, there's going to be so many steps to get there. And this is we're talking CDPs, and there's so many partners out there and so many solutions, and trying to tailor to personalization will be step taking. And if we're starting with cohorts and launching automated flows based off of interactions with us and things like that, try to get as personal as possible. But I think that's the area we're going. So what does that mean today? We're just trying to gather as much data as we can in a consented way with our customers, mainly through like surveys and just building these attributes on our CRM database from all these customers, including just a lot of incentivization to do this as well. So if you come fill it out, we'll give you something in return. But this should set us up a lot to at least start to pull attributes out of how we want to start to taxonomize these things. So then at some point we can start to then kind of bucket more of these. And then as time goes on, they'll probably trickle down and be something else. But that's
I love the agent-to-agent comment. It makes me feel like we're finally at the stage in which Second Life could actually be useful. We could use it for something. I mean, I know that the big axe was pointing at me that we have to wrap things up, and but I want to make sure that we leave 30 seconds to a minute for questions, just in case your appetite is not high enough. Do you guys have any questions? I mean, you can come and find us anyway at
Chubbyshorts.com.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And well, I mean, this is for like the marketing side for Shopify. My problem is always customer service, because we get flooded like with certain products when there's a defect, anything. My problem, well, it's not my problem. My benefit is I always have like celebrities or athletes wearing my gear for free. Which creates sometimes
that must suck.
No.
I feel for you, mate. Really, it's terrible.
No. Well, I mean that's I guess that's the benefit that I have, but I think it's like and I mean personally, owning the brand, I never really thought that customer service was going to be a big part, right? And what would you recommend like for AI like to integrate with my customer service team, or because that's where I'm having trouble, because I hire people and it's like everybody's on a different page, they want, or, since I don't know about this, I mean, I just kind of landed the brand, but, I guess what I'm trying to get is like, how do you pick a good customer service team, or how do you give them direction? Because every week I'm changing things because they're suggesting things which I think they're right, but turns out they're not.
I mean,
I'm happy to take this. Do you want? Okay. I mean, I think the first thing is like, what are the core issues that people are coming with, and how can you solve them in a, efficient way across the board? Give people the same talking points, have them, coming from the same song sheet, so you're not getting a bunch of different answers, especially if you're changing agents over the course of time. Obviously, we use a ton of chatbots, existing sort of databases of things that people can type in and get answers on. I think verticalized knowledge is always really important. We have people who specialize in streetwear, so they know what bots, and how to specialize in botwear versus those who are in luxury fashion and how to deal with, big spenders and, those kinds of chargebacks. So really specialized knowledge is also, I think, really important. I think the core of it all is like, you got to have your customer service teams talking to each other. What are they finding are the new issues? How do we solve for those immediately, and use the technology to then spread that information far and wide throughout the organization, including the marketing team, who can hopefully solve these with outbound marketing versus, everything needing to be a customer service issue the first time.
So would you say that like when, for example, the marketing team and the customer service team, are those meetings that you would put people together for?
Absolutely. Slack channels, meetings. We have like code yellow engineering issues where everybody's sort of in war rooms talking about like, here are the 10 issues that we're seeing most frequently. How can we solve on the marketing side? How can we solve on the engineering side? How can we solve, in the customer service side? Absolutely.
One thing we found helpful is we have like a monthly huddle that's called the Voice of the Customer, and it's really the whole team that brings together all of the inquiries, what types of inquiries they were, the post-purchase surveys, what did that say, what were the biggest hot topics, and then usually you'll find some themes and then start to kind of use the old Pareto principle, 80-20 thing, and start to kind of feel those out, and then as you get them, you build out your SOPs and all that good stuff. But we found that just little practice really valuable, but plus
100% agree.
From a technology perspective, it's interesting when you start using conversational AI to gather a lot of the information and do a lot of the classification that you're referring to. And then if you program that conversational AI to extract information using critical incidents analysis, which is what we would normally use in customer service, I think you will find yourself that it extracts information in a very replicable way, which over time you can follow a scientific process with. So you will start learning a lot more. This sounds all very expensive and complicated. In reality, it's what, $400 a month or something like that. And
or if your business is built on Shopify, we can definitely help you.
Goes without saying.
Yes. That are already built into the platform.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yes. I'll show you where those are.
And it's crazy because I did my first site myself, and like you said, anybody that starts with business, one person can do it, and I loved it. And from that day, we're still on Shopify. All my brands are on Shopify now.
Mic drop.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, guys. That was so fun.
Appreciate it very much.